us now, correspondent for National Review, Kevin Williamson. He's out now with a new book, The End is Near, and it's going to be awesome. How going broke will leave America richer, happier, and more secure. And yes, I'm going to need you to explain that. But first, let's talk about your little trip to the theater last night. How did that go for you? You were going to a play? Or?
Yeah, well, I'm theater critic also, so I'm out of the jobs.
So you have a job to do?
Yeah.
So you're trying to focus on
Well, there was a little vigilante justice. It was a really badly behaved audience, and there was a woman next to me on her phone all the way through. It was very sort of close seating, so she was basically kind of in my lap, and I asked her to stop. And she said, if you don't like it, well, then don't look.
Oh.
And then I asked her again if when they made the announcement at the beginning to not to use your phones, if there'd been a special exception made for her.
Right.
And she told me to mind my business, so I did.
Oh, wow. So twice you talked to her. That seems like a really logical approach for, you know, to ask her to stop.
So I took the phone out of her hand and threw it out the door.
And then what happened?
Oh, then I was thrown out of the theater.
Wait, so did you get up from your seat, go to the door, open the door, and
no, I just tossed it.
Just threw it in the aisle.
Kind of across the room, yeah. Down some stairs.
Big theater, small theater?
Smallish theater.
Yeah.
But we were all the way in the back, so I don't think I was really disturbing anyone than the people.
Who saw it that they came today? Like
she complained.
Did they forcefully?
She got to go look for her phone, so she ended up talking to the manager at some point.
Oh, my God.
Gordon Liddy going.
First of all, that is so Joe, by the way, except he would have made more of a flamboyant. He would have picked it up and, like, I think thrown it against the wall and watched it smash into 1,000 million.
And then maybe make a speech afterwards.
Perhaps about the rudeness of using cell phones in theaters when you're sitting next to someone. And even if you're texting, there's this bright light from the phone. You can't do that.
Bad form.
Bad form. We're on your side with that one.
Well, I like to think so, and I'll let you know if I go to jail over it.
Okay, yeah, please do. We're going to follow the story. All right, tell us why the end is near, and it's going to be awesome.
Well, if you look at government finances, state, federal, local, all put together, we're on a path that everyone agrees is clearly unsustainable. Democrats know, Republicans know, the CBO knows. So we're looking at a situation in which we're going to have to radically change at some point in the fairly near future our outlays, how we structure things like Social Security and Medicare, and also city and state finances. So the question that puts for us who are libertarians, free market people, is what do we do next? And the book is about how to be ready with some answers for how to deal with things like education, healthcare, financial requirements.
Okay, let's go through some answers then, because there are no easy answers, are there?
Right, and well, and sort of the point is that there's no single answer. You know, we have this thing we do where Washington has a debate on something every 5 years, and they try to pass one piece of legislation that's going to fix everything.
Right.
You know, we're going to fix healthcare with this one big stupid bill that no one's ever read that actually ends up making the system worse. We're about to do the same thing with immigration. We do it with schools every now and then. No Child Left Behind, terrible piece of legislation. What we really need is a system in which you've got a really distributed approach to the problem where people are allowed to develop their own solutions to their own problems. So it's not just the sort of free markets versus government thing, but voluntary activity versus this sort of top-down model. And that's really what
How does that end gridlock, though? How does that stop what's happening in Washington
nothing ends gridlock. What ends gridlock is that the government eventually runs out of money.
Yeah.
And they're going to keep spending exactly like they are and borrowing exactly like they are, right up until the moment in which the credit markets say no, no more. So we've got a choice to either have a quick, fast, ugly crisis or to start making reforms now that make the transition better.
You kind of answered my question, but I'll ask it in another way. At what point is our hand forced? Because whenever we talk about the spending problem, we all know it's a question of math. But Democrats in particular will come out and say, hands off Social Security, hands off Medicare, you can't touch it, we're going to stand firm for our seniors. At some point that argument is unsustainable itself because there's no money for the program.
Right.
When does that day come?
Well, you know, if our interest rates on treasuries went up to their historical average, say 6 months from now, 6.5%, that would put us hole in the budget roughly the size of the Pentagon, around, you know, close to $1 trillion a year just in interest payments. So if we go back to just to our average debt financing costs, then that's going to force changes right then and there. If we should go up to the higher end, and everyone remembers the 80s when rates got up to 20% on some of this stuff, that would take up practically the entire federal budget just for debt finance. And you can't default. I mean, that's the one thing Congress will not do. Congress will not default.
Johnny?
Well, I want to go back to why was No Child Left Behind a bad piece of legislation?
Because it centralizes things in Washington. It poses a sort of, you know, single standard, single model of education. You know, a country with 900 kinds of shampoo, we don't really need one model of K through 12 education. And the model we have is kind of an outdated one. It dates back to the 19th century in Prussia and Bismarck and all that stuff. It's just not a modern model.
So I love the purpose of this book, which you says is to attempt to answer a question. Why is it that the telephone in my pocket gets better and cheaper every year, but many of our critical institutions grow more expensive and less effective. That is an interesting parallel to make. But is there a key fundamental answer that you put out that's realistic, given the fact that we have a group of people in Washington who don't seem to be able to work together at this point effectively?
Yeah, I think the long-term pictures, they don't matter as much as they think they do. They can talk about the debt ceiling all day, but there's going to be a real debt ceiling they hit someday. They can try to keep alternatives from emerging, but in the long run, they really can't. You know, it's like the question of gun control. We talk about what government should do, but then something like 3D printers come along, and it's no longer something that's obvious the government can do. You know, you've got a situation that you can't necessarily control from Washington.
All right, the book is The End is Near, and it's going to be awesome. Kevin Williamson, thank you, and great story last night from the theater. We're on your side. They better not press charges. That would be very embarrassing for that lady who was on her phone. On tomorrow's show, Bob Woodward weighs in.